We'll start with the chant. An unsurpassed, penetrating, and perfect Dharma is rarely met with, even in 100,000 million kalpas. Having it to see and listen to remember and accept, I vow to taste the truth of the Tathagata's words. Again, good morning. This morning, it just happens to be the 34 years since both Shinshu and I were ordained. So at San Francisco Zen Center, normally I don't mark the anniversary of my ordination in any particular way. But this year, since it happened to fall on a day I was giving a Dharma talk, I thought I would. And it just seemed right to this year. 34 is a kind of nothing special year, you know? It's kind of like 22 or 46 or 57 or 64. Nobody really usually makes much of a fuss about 34. Do you agree? Yeah. So I think actually this is the way with us. No matter the shape of our lives, what matters most deeply to us is expressed mostly in an ordinary way, day to day, a kind of day-to-day journey. It's a kind of pilgrimage of meaning and mystery taken step by step with twists and turns and surprises. My ordination was a surprise in itself. I was deeply skeptical queer woman, still am, committed to social activism. I had many questions, many critiques, many quandaries, and yet I was drawn to the path of ordination in the Soto Zen tradition. Many years before I started Zen practice, I visited Tassajara as a guest with some friends. And when I arrived, I thought, I will live here someday. And it made no sense to me at the time. I didn't have a particular fantasy about the place. I didn't think it was always serene or perfect. And as I learned later when I did live there, that was absolutely true. It's not serene or perfect. But the sense that I would live there someday was clear as a bell. Entering Zen practice at all was a kind of mystery. I was familiar with Zen Buddhism, but I went to Zazen instruction because a friend of mine asked me to go with her, and I did not particularly like it. I was uncomfortable. There were a lot of men in black wandering around, but I went back. I went back because I felt drawn and compelled. I questioned everything. All the time spent on the cushion that could have been spent addressing the needs of those who were suffering. In particular, I questioned monastic practice and training. What good did it do for anyone but me? How could I justify it when so many were in need? I found I couldn't solve these questions by thinking about them, although I think it's crucial to have them, to live with them, to ask them with vigor. I found that I had to dive in and find what was most true beneath my usual thinking. to follow that which seemed most true. And I would say so it has gone all these years. A pilgrimage that has included my questions, my wrestling, and taken me in directions I could not have predicted. I find it fitting that my first practice home was Hartford Street Zen Center in the Castro in San Francisco. My first teacher was Isan Dorsey, a former drag queen, maybe not so former drag queen, who loved his martinis and took us to Hot and Hunky for burgers after our half-day sittings. It was a home. It was a small zendo filled with ordinary people. Sometimes I was the only one in the zendo on the days that Isan wasn't there. Sometimes some of the guys would show up in leather after a night on the town and sit zazen. Sometimes people would wander into the zendo. It was a little wild. It was beautiful. Longer sits were at San Francisco Zen Center. And as I sat, I came to feel I wanted to ordain. So I packed up in my truck and drove around the country and visited different Zen centers. And then ended up in England, where I lived in a Buddhist community out in the countryside in Devon, and determined that I wanted to return to San Francisco Zen Center and train at Tassajara. And when I came back, I met and fell in love with Shinshu and went to Tassajara anyway. I needed to go. And then I returned and we practiced at City Center as residents for a time, and then we both went down and spent 4 years in that valley together with others that are still in our lives, good buddies on the way. We were ordained by Tenshin Reb Anderson Roshi. We studied with him for 1 year, and then we shifted to Sojin Mel Weitzman. And I have to say, I'm deeply, deeply grateful to Tenshin Roshi for ordaining me, and for the teachings I received from him, and for his generosity. From that time on, Sojin Roshi guided my path and continues to guide my path. After my formal training, I chose to leave the all-encompassing life at San Francisco Zen Center and follow what seemed most alive and maturing to me. This was not an easy choice, nor a particularly popular one. I returned to regular work, graduate school and counseling, more graduate school to follow my desire to study Dogen's way and how to support people on it, then work in academic teachings and mentoring Buddhist chaplains and ministers, and helping to found Ocean Gate Zen Center. Who could have predicted any of that? I did not know what my path would be when I stepped on it. I think none of us do. And isn't that a gift? To not know? Each step followed the next, each not predicted. This is responsive to our inner world and threading our way through circumstances, society, all the things we cannot control, but we have to practice with. This is how it is for us, I think. For me, thinking about this anniversary, I was reminded of the work of Reverend Edward Wimberly, who wrote on the practice of renewal, a return to the source of renewal for us as individuals and communities, and the role of stories, of narrative. Reverend Wimberly wrote how his father, who like him was an African-American Methodist minister, would return every year to the story of his calling to ministry, reflect on it, speak of it, and find new meaning in it by connecting his own story to the stories of his faith. To do this is to remind ourselves of who we have been, how we have lived, what is important, and also of the mystery of our lives, and how all of this intersects and expresses the teachings. Reverend Wimberly connects us with African American spiritual traditions, particularly the importance of community, witness, and connection. I think all of us can find these same elements in our lives and in the way we share the truth of our lives with others. Sharing the truth of our lives with others in community is liberative. In particular, it liberates us from the ways in which we might be defined by that society. This is one thing that I think Reverend Wimberly points out so clearly. To claim one's own narrative and to be not in a rigid or fixed way, but in a way that is dignified, empowering, creative, undoes the toxic ways in which our culture, our society, our own ideas can colonize us. So we think of first, community. We are never apart from the community of all beings, and our lives take shape in that context. Our immediate community is particularly vital. To feel oneself valued, affirmed, and companioned by others who also value, affirm, and who we also value, affirm, and companion is very important. We say to one another, I will be with you. You are not alone. And I will remember who you are for you when you forget. And you will do the same for me. We come to know intimacy in this way. We are all, the Buddha Dharma tells us, empty of inherent existence, fluid, mutable, moment by moment, and so is everything else. But that teachings means we are also unique expressions of reality to be honored and respected. When we sit together, we affirm each other in our community. When we sing together, when we have tea together, chant together, share our lives with one another, this takes shape. This companionship is not secondary to the path. The Buddha said, when asked about spiritual friendship, if spiritual friendship was a part of the path, he said, no, it is the path. It is the whole of the path. So this is a kind of koan that opens up the world to us. It does not mean it's always easy or comfortable, but we see one another beyond likes and dislikes. We see deeper. We witness. To witness is to see clearly, without an agenda, the being, the reality of another or a situation. To witness means we are willing to be there. In the context of this talk, it is the sense of witnessing a truth, a story, a being, and also being seen and recognized by another. To tell of our journey to ourselves, or to an empty room, to a tree, to a pet, is very different from saying it to another, to a group of people who attend, listen, and recognize it. It is transformative and life-giving. To bear witness to another is to give a great gift of respect and care. To bear witness is not intrusive. It's not driven by the need to fix or manage. It is simply to be with, fully and wholeheartedly, as best you can. We bear witness to ourselves and to others, to all others. And this is a part of connection, which is the third aspect that Reverend Wimberly talks about. Connection, in this sense, points to the deep bonds that grow within community, and also to the reality of interconnection with all beings. There is nothing but connection. This is true. This is the teachings of the Buddha. The question is, how do we experience and live that? How and when? Each of these elements bring light and life to us. They lift burdens and help us honor each of our journeys. And they point to a kind of intimacy that does not erase particularity, humanness, need, and caring. Like Reverend Wimberly and his father, all of us, we witness our own lives and the lives of others in the context of community and connection. This includes all of the lives of the people who have carried the Dharma in this world, all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, ancestors, and humble, ordinary people whose names we will never know. All of them are present. Reverend Wimberly also points out that the teachings, the scriptures, tell us about our lives and our pilgrimage. And our connection with them shapes our witness and our community. Thinking about this anniversary, I recalled a short passage in Dogen Senji's Eihei Koroku. So this is a short Dharma Hall discourse that was given on the occasion of closing the fireplace. This is something that is done as a part of the monastic year, at least at Eiheiji, and actually his earlier temple. So Dogen Senji is said to have said this: look at Koshoji's single red fire. The entire universe in 10 directions joins to form the pattern. Our life is training to become Buddha ancestors. This morning, I used my hands to offer tea gruel. Look at Koshoji, this is the temple, at Koshoji's single red fire. The entire universe in 10 directions joins to form the pattern. Our life is training to become Buddha ancestors. This morning, I used my hands to offer tea gruel. Dogen is asking us to look at the single red fire. This single red fire, this particularity, this life. Look and see it is particular and changing, dependent upon wood, air, support from the earth, and very specific in this moment. The entire universe in the 10 directions is present in each moment, each person, phenomenon, each life, the whole of reality. How could anything be separate from the whole of reality, right? It is the whole of reality. A single pattern, a reality including and expressed in each particularity. Our life of training to become Buddha ancestors, in other words, our life of training to become awake humans in love with our world, both fully responsive to others and unswervingly rooted in the teachings, is expressed concretely in the simple act of offering tea gruel. The whole universe in one particular set of hands, one gesture, one moment. Dogen doesn't shy away from using the word I, and he says his hands offer. There is no lack of the personal, no vagueness about the fact that he as an individual is the one that offers the gruel. He and the entire universe at the same time. This is what he's asking us to look. And that looking is an expression of the entire universe and of our particularity. We attend to our particular expression of life. We honor our unique presence in the world, and we are not bound by it. If we are tied to any particular story, we are imprisoned by it. This is an essential element of our path and of the process of renewal, letting go of everything. In our tradition, we do this in Zazen. So we know Zazen cannot be corralled by any definition, but I think we can think of it as a renewal. In Zazen, we sit and allow ourselves to be reoriented, realigned. We throw ourselves into the house of the Buddha, breath by breath. We sit in silence, or as close to silence as we can manage at any given day, any given moment, given our brains and how much they like to be like monkeys. And we discover that what we are is more than our ideas, our habits, our preferences, our narratives, our stories. Being busy in the world can so easily shore up our notions of self and other, promote a sense of acting upon others, people, things, environment. It can solidify the narratives and definitions we have about ourselves and others, and this, as we know, can be terribly, terribly toxic. Even as we move from one thing to the next, we can ossify. What we're pointing to here is that even as we embody the dignity of our particularity, empower our voice, our perspective, we are not bound. We can let go in a second. When we sit, we're not attempting to demolish our narrative, stories, definitions, or turn our backs on the suffering of the world. We sit and allow ourselves to taste the reality of a self that is not apart from all of reality. It's all included. Then, when it is time to act, we act with others. And that acting is fruitful and enlivening, even when it is difficult. We act from the base of our lives. We know the vastness of it, and so we can act with integrity and flexibility and care, and we are not bound. I think in the pilgrimage of our lives, we join with others in community, connection, witnessing, mutual support, and our own particular intentions, and take a journey. Sometimes it's arduous. It's a journey to a place of special significance, which is not different from this moment. We let go and we walk. We let go and we walk. A favorite book of mine that I have spoken about before was written by a very down-to-earth Catholic priest who walked the pilgrimage of Santiago de Compostela. And he writes of the variety of pilgrimage companions he meets. They intersect and go their way, and some walk the whole path with him, and some he walks with just for a few days. He speaks of blisters and snoring in the dorms at night, of stars and faith and generosity. Walking step by step as a pilgrim, he was changed. Not in ways he could have predicted, but in ways that were healing and transformative. He was renewed. He went into the pilgrimage as a kind of burnt out professor, and he was transformed. And then he went back. So there's a kind of mystery to this kind of renewal. Things are unpredictable, and yet there is a path to follow. Usually one that many, many others have followed already. To go on pilgrimage is to step onto and into a path with others, and at the same time to come face to face with oneself in a very deep and personal way, interior and connected. You are the one that takes the steps. You enact the path with your body, your rhythm, your pace, your unique expression of reality. I think of my own path of coming to Zen with wariness, a critical eye, and a demand that I not be required to cut off any part of myself, and of finding a path of practice that met me and then some. I entered a specific way of following that path 34 years ago, one that drew me and challenged me. I have had many companions and teachers along the way, humans, trees, yucca plants in the moonlight, non-human animals, Buddha's ancestors, rocks, wind, fog, robes, bowls, the round black cushion I'm still sitting on to this day, the entire universe, each step. Dogen Zenji tells us, look at Koshoji's single red fire. The entire universe in 10 directions joins to form the pattern. Our life is training to become Buddha ancestors. This morning, I used my hands to offer tea gruel. Nothing spectacular, ordinary gruel, ordinary hands, basically the same as everyone else's. As we go together in this way, we mature together, each in their own way. What we feel called to do in this life may vary greatly, not only from person to person, but from year to year, or maybe even sometimes from day to day. And yet, it is a particular expression of our intention and a single red flame, this moment, the entire universe. Thank you.